Hey y'all, Carolina Tony here. Today we will be traveling to the middle of the desert in Arizona to the Kaibab Indian Reservation, site of the Pipe Springs National Monument. This is a site of where, in my opinion, a great human injustice occurred, and there are conflicting sides on both sides of the story, and we'll discuss some of that. But we'll get started right after this station identification. This is the Pipe Spring National Monument. It is on a Indian reservation. We are going to learn a little bit about Pipe Spring shortly. This is land that the federal government gave the Kanab Indian tribe, which is a branch of the Paiute Indians. If you look across, first thing that comes to my mind is this is worthless land. You see the red dirt and rocks. What can you do with it? The Paiutes once lived in homes just like these as they dwelled near the springs. When the Spanish came with them bringing the slave trade, women and children were carted off to slave markets. And this is the Pipe Spring National Monument. Okay, behind me at this big stone structure, this is the Pipe Spring National Monument. A little history behind this thing was actually put up between 1870 and 1871. Prior to this, this was just an open spring that had been flowing for thousands of years. Now, the American Indians believed that no one could own the water, that the water was for everybody. But the Mormons moved in while the Indians was out hunting or whatever, and they built this big stone house over it. And it was up to the will and pleasure of whoever was living here at the time as to whether they would let the American Indians have access to the water or not. This is the Pipe Spring House in 1891. Well, actually what happened is in the 1870s, the Mormons moved into town, and to make a long story short, they run the Indians off. And they built this big, huge stone structure over the well. Well, this is the spring house right here. And here's a spring. And this spring has been here. This is why they call it the pipe house. It's coming from underground. It's been flowing through here for thousands of years. And prior to this huge building being built over it, this is where the Native Americans would come to get water, because we are in the middle of the desert. And this building has been preserved, but there's a glass here so you can see actually what it looks like prior to preservation. Of course, the Indians would live nearby, wouldn't necessarily stay here all the time, but they would come get water and they would leave. And all these stones are original. It's a bedroom. So as I was told, The Indians would come get water whenever they want, but once the Mormons built this stone structure over the well, it was up to the will and pleasure of whoever was living here, the American natives, access to the well. And this would actually be their house where families of Mormons would stay from time to time. One family would move out, another would move in. You see these glass insulators right here and the wire going up and over. This bedroom was the very first telegraph office in Arizona. When businessman James Whitmore rode from St. George to see how his 11,000 sheep, 500 cattle, and 1,000 grapevines were faring, he often slept here in this dugout, a rough shelter hand dug in the ground. Now, prior to the Mormons coming in 1870 and building the stone house around the well, James Whitmore came in the early 1860s. He was one that was instrumental in bringing cattle to this area. This house was built on the site of the James Whitmore house, looking pretty much like it did back then. This is a reproduction. A little more primitive. And you know, there's a lot of talk about how people lived in the South, and it was so terrible that some people of different social classes had to live in houses on dirt floors. But look, 1860, little house on the prairie, a roof that probably leaked like crazy when and if it rained. And of course, when the Mormons came, this house was still here, and they lived here as well, prior to the big stone house being built. Yeah, there's one big cow. Whitmore. Of course, we see a lot of trees and greenery around this hill out in the desert. Wherever there's water, you will see life. As you look out across the prairie there, farther you get away from the source of water, the less life there is. Another cabin with dirt floors. Pipe Springs was the headquarters for Windsor Castle Stock Growing Company in the Southern Utah Tithing Office. And you wonder why they call it the Southern Cattle Tithing Office, is because it was run by Mormons, and a portion of their tithes to the church was given in cattle. Very primitive. In 1880, all before you would be covered in grass. But after the cattle came, within 10 years, all this grass was gone. Even though there had been no drought, the cattle would have destroyed the grass by cropping it clean. Before the sheep and cattle came, the Paiute people made the tiny seeds of these native grasses a staple of their diet. Even the animals hunted by the cab people, cab Paiute, like grouse, rabbits, or antelope, lived on this nutrient-rich grass. Then in the 1860s, thousands of sheep and cattle were put on the range to take advantage of this sea of grass. Without warning, in a 10-year period of cooler, moist weather ended, scarce rain and snow combined with overgrazing changed all their lives that depended on the good grass. I know it is very hard to imagine, but can you imagine your whole family traveling from the East Coast across the mighty Mississippi into the West in this thing? Well, that's going to be a wrap for our trip to the Pipe Spring National Monument, also known as Windsor Castle, formerly a spring used by the Kaibab band of Paiute Indians. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give me a big old thumbs up. Be sure to share it with your family and friends. But until next time, y'all have a good day.